proof of that.
Yeah. Yeah, Ron is
Oh, yeah.
We got a couple more minutes here. We're just waiting for the last few students.
Do they have a copy of that?
No, hey, if any of the students, if you by chance brought the rule book in, you can follow. We're going to kind of go through that, and then so this is the page we start on, the safety page. If we do have it,
Rule book, page 18.
CD, yeah, page 18.
We have access to one.
And then I'm just going to go through a sheet that we hand wrote about safety. Yes, just like that. All right, one more minute, we'll start. Yeah. All right, guys, girls, everyone, let's get started. Thank you for coming in today. Go ahead, you have a question already.
Yes. So, are you allowed to use dry ice to cool the solar panel?
I don't think that that's a problem, but you'd have to double check with your mentor but as far as from safety standards,
Except for the handling of it, you have gloves, you have the special gloves or any kind of handling tools?
yeah, dry ice is so cold, if you grab it with your bare hands, you'll burn your hands.
I mean, it was our teacher's idea.
Yeah, no, that may work. We want you to think outside the box, but you still have to consider safety.
Just don't get hurt.
Yeah, and then it has to be safe. So when you design or doing something, whatever application, you make sure you have the right tools and you're doing it in a safe way, or whatever modification. Okay, so real quick, I'll introduce myself. You're welcome. I'm Charlie from the Go-Kart track, Musselman Honda circuit. I have my card up here if you want one. You can see our website. It's where we ran last year. We ran the last 3 or 4 years. The solar go-kart racing is where we do the test. I come from the background of racing and all these years, and then the track's been open just over 13 years, so we have a lot of experience with risk and exposures. And when we designed the track, unlike if you ever go to go-kart tracks, like whenever I go to a different city, I always like to go either before or after business, go by a go-kart track, indoors or outdoors. But when we designed the track, we made it with a lot of runoff. It's a very safe track relative speaking to other tracks, in comparison to other tracks. But it's a professional kart racing track. It's 1,200 meters long, 1,264 by 10 meters wide. So it's real wide, the track you're on, and you only use the west portion. It's like a odd-shaped oval, more like a kidney-shaped oval. But anyway, so we're here today to talk about safety. Phil, buddy of mine since we were little kids, 10 years old or so, we've been friends, and now we're all in the 60s. Phil was on the USS Ranger and in the military, and then worked for Raytheon for years, retired from the fire department there. And he does, lots of times he'll do our EMT. He's an emergency medical technician, and he teaches out at Pima College. But he's going to help us for a little bit here today, talk about safety too. He's the guy he said earlier.
Yeah, you can see me now, because you don't want to see me later. If you see me later, you probably have an injury. So we prefer that you pay attention today. It's really important. Charlie has a lot of valid points working on the kart, safety gear especially. And then at the end, I'll probably need like 5-10 minutes. And I'm going to talk about things you already know, remind you of the safety rules you probably already know about. But for me, I teach EMTs for a living, and it's all about situational awareness. You can apply that to anything. So we'll probably use some of the stuff I use with them, with you guys, especially related to the track and knowing where you're at all times and what's happening around you. So Charlie's going to take off from there.
Thank you, Phil. So you know what? He actually hit one of the things I have in like my first paragraph here. So real quickly, I just took, you guys are really lucky, because when I was a kid, if we wanted to find something, how far away is the sun, how far away is the moon, how long, what's the moon, how long is it before it rotates? Well, it doesn't rotate, it's still, it's a dark side.
Well, technically, I'm just saying the moon does rotate, but just rotating at such a pace that it's constantly facing towards the star.
Thank you, it's constantly facing towards us because it's doing this. But those things, you guys, if you have a question, just go in your computer and do a search and you can find so much information. So you're really lucky. So, but what I did is I used that information, or that resource, and I have to put my glasses on because as you get older, your eyes go away. But okay, so safety. So what's it mean? It's a condition of being protected. Okay, that's one simple meaning. It also means to another person, they asked them, they said it means taking the time to recognize the hazards, taking the appropriate steps to protect yourself and your fellow students, family, or friends. So if you knew there was a hazard in a walkway and you were walking, you go, hey, I know there's a Tucson electric power line down over there. I know you guys want to go see it, but just stay way back or don't even go. Then you're telling your friends, hey, there's a hazard. And what Phil hit on is probably one of the most important things is situational awareness. Do you guys know what that is? Mm-hmm. That is, I know there's chairs right here, so I'm not going to turn over and step and fall over it. I know that we're in a building, we're on the second floor, and if there's emergency, I've been in a couple fires, unfortunately. I'm from here, but I worked in New York City in the World Trade Center, and I moved back home before I got knocked down. But in my apartment, I was up on the fourth floor, and the building caught on fire, and there was no way out, except for the fire escape. Well, when we went out to the fire escape, I looked down, I got a bunch of people out on the fire escape. The flames were coming out the window below us, and the fire escape was red hot, glowing. You know, like when you get a piece of metal and it's glowing. So we couldn't go down. We were really lucky because a fire truck came in, and they started putting their ladder up before they even stopped. And they hit one of the, you know how they have big street lights like this, and they're real high up in the air? Well, when the ladder came up and hit the street light, I remember the bulb falling, boom! And they got the ladder up, we got everybody off, and I was at the top, last one down. But I at least had the sense, you know, where I'm at, what's happening, what am I gonna do, how am I gonna get out? I didn't wanna get burned. When I was a kid, I worked for his dad for a company because I always worked because I wanted to race, and so I'd work and save money and go race. But a generator light went on inside the truck. And I did what you should never do. I should have pulled off, let the truck cool down, but instead I was like, oh, I didn't know any better. I stopped, I was in the intersection, I just put it in park, and there was not much traffic back when we were kids. And I opened up the hood and the thing blew up and it burnt my face, burnt my arm, 3rd degree here, and boiled the skin off my face. That was just because I didn't have the experience. No one ever told me any of these things. I had to learn kind of the hard luck way. But I was working for his father doing that, and I got burned. I ended up in TMC laying there, putting ice rags on me and peeling the skin off because it like boiled chicken, and it was bad. It was really painful. But we learn through these experiences, and hopefully you learn from other people's experience, from me telling you. So, for example, in cars, when we race cars at the racetrack, if a car quits, we don't want the guy jumping out. Same thing if a car quits and you're in the go-kart, driving it, we want you to stay in it, we'll come out and get you. You can raise your hand and wave it so the guys behind you can see that you're in there, but the safest place to be is in the cart. We'll come, push the cart out of the way, and then we'll say, okay, you're clear to get out and go stand over here until the race is over. That's the way we do it in all races, cars, go-karts, motorcycles. We usually say if your cart's quitting, get it off the racing line, and just get out of the way, but stay in the cart. So it's safest to stay in the cart, and that's what I learned from, like I told you, when I got burnt by the truck. But so that situational awareness is just basically being aware of your situation. If there was a problem, and you don't want to live your life where you're worried about those things. It just needs to be second nature. You don't want to be worrying about this or that. You just want to go, okay, if something did happen, where would we take all these kids? He probably thinks about it because he was a fireman, and that's what they do. Where would I tell the kids to exit? Where would we have the hallways burning and have to get down here? How would we get out the window?
Well, one thing we could do is, from what I can tell, the window appears not too particularly high from the roof downstairs. We should be able to. If we were to jump onto the roof, we should be able to walk away with minimal injuries.
Yeah, and those are the.
He brings up a great thing. He's already thought about, if this happens, then I do this. It always pays to ahead of time have, if this happens, then I have some sort of escape plan, something to do. So on the way up, being a fireman, it's second nature to me to look for sprinklers. This room has sprinklers. I look for exits. Many of you don't do that, but always look for another way out. It's something to think of, keep in the back of your mind. Where you're at, how am I gonna get out of here? So that if and then thinking really pays off. That's a good point.
Yeah, real good point. So situational awareness is probably one of the most important things. You know, you see a lot of people these days, everybody has their phone out with them all the time, or most people do. You gotta find the time to get away from it. But you'll see people in the streets, you look when you're driving home or something, you'll see people like this. And they won't even look up to see if the cars are coming. They look up, see the light screen, they just walk across like this. That's not such a situational awareness. As you come up, you look, cars are slowed down, they've stopped, now you can walk. And that's the same thing as if you're working on your go-kart and you put it up on jacks and it's kind of wobbly, don't climb underneath it until you've got it secure so that you're not underneath and it falls on you. You're probably gonna die, but if there's a car you could, but you gotta think of those things ahead that are potentially trouble, and you don't want to just take unreasonable risk. Okay, so I started to read that to you. So it said safety means that taking the time to recognize the hazard, taking the appropriate steps to protect yourself, your fellow students, family, and friends. Everybody should develop a habit of thinking about safety at school, on the way home, at home, on vacation. Safety is the state of being safe. From a French word, sauf. I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly. I don't speak too much French. But S-A-U-F. The condition of being protected from harm and other non-desirable outcomes. The non-desirable outcome is seeing him with a broken arm or something. And that's what you don't want to see him. That's what he does. He does it over at the motocross, and motocross is a dangerous sport. So you have to, somebody crashes, they break their leg, you're there, okay, just breathe steady, relax, and you get them fitted and secure the leg so it's not moving until the
And the only sport they don't want to work, so further that I just sit there and watch, right?
Right. Okay. So safety can also refer to the control of a recognized hazard in order to achieve an acceptable level of risk. I put that sentence in because I'll read it again, but that's what we do in racing. When we race motorcycles, we race go-karts, we know, hey, here's our risk. This is an acceptable risk because we are wearing a helmet. We've got a carbon fiber rib protector. We've got gloves. This, the open wheel carts, and like your go-karts, they don't go that fast, but potentially a rock can fly off the wheel. When we say open wheel, it means there's no fenders. The tires are exposed. I've been in a go-kart and I have my helmet down, and all of a sudden, bam, I'm like, what was that? And a big spring comes off the foot. It was on the track, I didn't see, came off the front wheel, hit the helmet. Had you not had the helmet on, I would have had stitches and a bad injury. But those are acceptable risks because you have protection and you're thinking about it and you're prepared. So if that risk that you're willing to accept happens, you're prepared so you're not cut or injured. So now I'm going to move down to what I did is I've got some different points, and I want you guys, if you have any feedback, the good thing about you guys is you're kind of like a blank sheet, and you guys are going to come up with ideas. Some of them work, some of them don't work at all. Some of them are like, well, that's not going to work. But that's how new things are invented. People come along and they go, hey, well, I'm going to try this. Was it safe? Well, maybe I shouldn't. Well, I'm going to try this. Oh, is that going to work? No. I'm going to try this. Oh my gosh, it works great. Then you patent it. You know, that's how things happen. So here, I'm just going to say, okay, when you guys arrive at the racetrack, these things really apply to anybody. Tonight we've got sports cars and kids coming out that drift their cars. These same things we apply. When they come in, we have a sheet, that's this sheet, for example, and we hand it to them, and they have, here's the rules. They basically read as this. When you come onto the track, you must be, minors under 18 must be accompanied by an adult or guardian, which in this case is either your parents or your mentor. No bikes, scooters, roller skates, RC cars, pets are allowed at the track. We love animals, I do, but we don't have them at the track. I don't bring my animals because they can just take off and get scared and run on the track or something. And then RC stuff, we don't allow any of that because we have to control the radio waves. And scooters and stuff of that nature. I've had people pull into the track. They have a trailer. They have rebar sticking out the back of the track, the truck this far, and some kid's coming around on a scooter, and the rebar goes right by his head, and you're like, oh my gosh. So first thing you do is tell the guy, put the rebar down, go first the guy that has the rebar, get it on the ground where it's not exposed, and then the young man on the scooter, no scooters are allowed at the track. So any tracks, if you go to pretty much any tracks, they don't allow them. There are some exceptions to that in some events. But, so paddock, these are some of the items. Minors must be accompanied, no bikes, scooters, no one is allowed to enter the race area. So onto where the track is itself, you're not allowed to go out there. Wristbands are worn. Wristbands are worn so that we can identify that you've signed in, and what that does for the racetrack is it provides insurance. So if you do get hurt, the racetrack has insurance to cover your medical bills if you don't have medical insurance. That's really important these days because medical can be very, very expensive. And then I go on down to please do not run in the pits. We try not to have kids, even though it happens sometimes. We don't want you running because there's a lot of obstacles. And like I said, that piece of rebar sticking this high out of the back of the truck, people pull in and we don't catch it. We don't want you to run into it. We like you to run, but in the appropriate situations. No operating your cart. So you guys, solar carts, you can't operate them under power in the pit. Push them out to the hot pit, which is where we stage in that front area where the shades are. And then you'll be, okay, now you can turn switch on and go out onto the track. We don't want you operating the vehicle in the pit. Again, interrupt me if you have a question. I'm sorry if I missed a hand. Okay, and then some of the most important things of anything, and this goes situational awareness, and this goes at the track or at home. If you have long hair, belts, anything hanging from you, you have to put that away. Long hair can get caught in the gears in the back, and you could be at home and you could have an off-highway, off-road cart, or the neighbor could have one, and you have a girl or a guy that gets in and they have long hair and he gets caught in the gears. It usually scalps the person or breaks their neck, which is really bad. So be aware of that. If you see somebody with a cart at home, especially at the track, I shouldn't say that, either place. If you see somebody getting in a go-kart and their hair is hanging out, talk to them. Say, hey, look, you really need to put that up in the helmet. So anyone with long hair, that's probably the biggest risk we have at the go-kart track, believe it or not. It's somebody coming in with long hair and we don't catch it, or the hair falls out of the helmet and it's hanging down there where the belts and pulleys are. It's very, very dangerous. So that's
A lot of moving parts.
a lot of moving parts. Okay, so that's kind of the paddock, and that's just a brief summary. But can you guys think of anything else if you're in the paddock that might be dangerous? I said earlier, if you have your car up on jacks and you're working on it, make sure it's secure.
Potential short circuits.
Yes, that's we're going to get to the actual servicing the vehicle next. But yeah, touching this. So let's just jump to that unless you have something else in the paddock area. Vehicle servicing. So with racing go-karts like the one that was downstairs that we had, you guys probably saw earlier, there was the electric one, which is the future, and that old gas one on the left when we were in the auditorium early. They're really cool, but combustion has been. We really need the electric is the way to go. But when we work on those go-karts, gas or electric, you really want to put gloves on and take a rag and start cleaning the cart. And if you go through as you clean it and check it, you'll find cracked pieces, you'll find worn out pieces, you'll find broken pieces. And I always tell young people that come to the track and they buy their own go-kart and they're racing go-karts, they're like, so what can I do that's really important to make it go faster? Wipe it down, because when you go and clean it, that's when you find something that's not, the bearing's worn out, or the bearing's broken, or a bolt's broken or stripped, or something's cracked. That's how we always find it. That's how I always find it. That's how our mechanics find it. They start cleaning it, and you go, uh-oh, this isn't right, then you replace it.
Something else you could do to make it faster is potentially add some iron graphite powder to the bearings.
Yeah, there's a few different lubricants and that you can use to make it so it operates smoother. So the vehicle servicing, in most instances, if you're working on it, you want to have gloves, either plastic gloves or leather type gloves. You want to have eye protection. The reason eye protection is really important with cars is because batteries, if a battery pops or a battery explodes or a battery burns, or you're working on something and a piece of metal flies up, it's good to have some type of safety glasses It's not always required, but most of the time it's just good to have some type of eye protection if you're working on machinery. It's advisable. The proper tools. If you're working on something, you really want to have the proper tools so that you can do a good job. If you're stripping a wire, if you're putting, have you guys used shrink wrap ever? Mm-hmm. So shrink wrap is like this. So say you have a wire, it's just a tube. It almost looks like a straw. It's used a lot. You'll cut the size that you need with a pair of scissors. You'll put it over what you're trying to protect and insulate, and then you'll take a heater like a blow dryer or a heat gun, and you'll align it, and then you'll heat it up, and it shrinks in real tight and holds it all together and insulates it. And shrink wrap's used a lot in electrical components to hold stuff together, to insulate it so it's not exposed, so it doesn't bump other metal and short out. So if you're using the proper tool, it's really important. And if you don't have the proper tool, just ask, because the guys that have experience will go, oh no, use this, try it this way. So when you're servicing the vehicle, you need to, as I mentioned earlier, looking for loose or broken parts while you're cleaning it. And when you're doing that, wear gloves. That way you don't get your hands all dirty. That way you don't cut yourself on a sharp edge. Kill switches. Kill switches is probably, even though there was a class, anybody have that class yet? There was a class about kill switches. They're so important because something shorts out, boom, thing just takes off. We have race cars with a lot of horsepower, and somebody's there working on it, and every now and then I'll go out in the pit, and we're spot checking some of the customers, and they're boom, boom, revving, and if the throttle sticks, which happens sometimes, how do you shut the engine off? It just runs until it blows up. Kill switch on an electric motor or on a combustion engine is really important, because otherwise it can get away from you, you can ruin your project. Kill switch is very important. And you won't think it's that important because you don't use it very often. But when all of a sudden you're like, shut the thing off, I can't, then all of a sudden it becomes really important. Okay? So in your projects, make certain that you have a kill switch and say, hey, let's test it. Let's make sure it works. Check the continuity, check whatever you need to do to make sure it's properly grounded and it's going to shut the motor or engine down. In this case, it's a motor, electric motor. And then the stand, I have that also on there, servicing. Again, I'll touch on that. When you put a car or a vehicle or an electric go-kart or any solar go-kart, anything up on a stand, make sure it's not all wobbly where it's just going to fall off and damage it, or it's going to fall on you if you're underneath it. Especially if you're climbing underneath the vehicle, it needs to be properly secured and properly mounted on a stand with backup safety stands. So just because you put it on a couple stands, that's not enough. You want to have the couple stands and then like something backing up here, so in case something tips or falls, you still got another stand. It's not going to drop all the way down. So think about that as you're working on it, as you move your vehicle around to work on it. Anybody have anything on vehicles servicing? Any ideas or any suggestions? Yes.
Check if your lug nuts for the tires are tightened.
Yes. The wheels?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. That's a good one. That's a real good one. We have that. That's actually the next one we get to. But it's good. You got to have your wheels have to be secure and tight. We've had wheels come off at our track sometimes, very rarely. But I'll tell you the rest of that. Go ahead.
So if you're working on the go-kart, it's best to shut it off?
Yes. Yes. Depending on what you're doing, in most cases, it's best to shut it off. Make sure your kill switch is off, and then start working on it. And then know what's the hot side of that switch and what's the downside, the cold side. Hot side, I mean that the circuit's still hot.
We were kind of thinking something along the lines of zip ties to make sure your wires don't get caught in the machinery when you're working on the electrical system.
Yeah. It's very important that you wrap your wires, and your wires are zip tied and secure. When they're bouncing, if they're loose, they'll get chafed, which means they're wearing and they can short. So you want to have your wires always insulated and do a nice clean job if you can. I mean, you can always cut the wires off and redo it. So it's not the end of the world. If you do it and you step back and you go, wow, that just isn't, I think I could do better. You do it, try to make it better. You want to make a nice harness so that the wires are insulated first, and then they're secure, and they're not rubbing against something that's going to wear a hole in them or anything of that nature. And just so it looks nice, you want to have it to present nice. And again, you guys, if if you're not sure what a wire harness looks like, type in wire harness in Google and go look at it, and then look at the